Hi, I'm Roger Pine from Holistiplan. This is Winning with Holistiplan. I'm here with Mike Zung. He is going to talk with us today about, technology. We're going to talk about maybe some equity comp things, various things. We're both wearing our tuxedos. Mike, thank you
Right.
for wearing that. We didn't just do this randomly. This was by plan. The idea behind the tuxedo is financial planning doesn't have to be too fancy. It's something that all of us can do. We just got to get started somewhere, and you can work your way up to a full tuxedo one day, but you can start here with a tuxedo. So
Right.
Mike, thank you for joining me. Glad to have you here. Looking forward to talking with you.
Yep. Yeah. I totally appreciate it. I'm really excited to talk about whatever we want to talk about. Yep. And I dressed up. I even tucked in my tuxedo
That's
into
critical.
my shorts.
Critical, yeah. Yeah, that's great. Well, I guess it'd be useful just to kind of set the table with, I'd love to hear about your business, the focus that you have as far as clients go, and maybe just some backstory about how you got into the business, because you have not been a financial advisor your whole life. You came
Right.
from elsewhere. So yeah, just kind of tee it up that way.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. So I started my RAA in 2018. So it's called Java Wealth or Java Wealth Planning. I started it in 2018. I'm based in Kansas City. And so, yeah, as far as just the super quick version of my background is, I actually came from software development, came from IT. So I was a computer science major, and I worked as a developer, a Java developer for many years. So once I came up with that name for a firm, then that definitely spoke to me. So I was basically doing that for a good while, but then almost 20 years. And then basically from that point, I kind of reevaluated things a little bit to figure it's like, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? And personal finance has been a thing that had always spoke to me. And so basically I just, started to go down the path of like, what would it look like if I would switch to be a financial planner? And just started taking, one step after another. And, I look up now in 2022 and I have have the business. I walked away from IT at the beginning of 2020, into 2019, beginning 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been doing this full time and having a blast with it.
Well, I want to make sure to talk about something that you've become famous for, internet famous, and that is your work with data visualizations. I think probably arising out of the fact that you have a software development background, you're very comfortable building your own tools or amending the tool set that are out there. And I wanted to, I want to highlight that Mike has become famous for a set of, how would we describe them? Client deliverables, client visualizations that he's actually packaged up into a product. I think it wasn't your plan, but enough people asked for it. They're like, can you share this with us? You're like, yeah, sure. Okay. And it's called Beautiful Financial Plan. Right.
Yep.
And that's kind of launched, and that's out there as a tool set for advisors who want to do some better work with how they explain things to clients. How did that, maybe I did a 80% job of explaining, but how did that come about? Like, how did you start taking your tech stack? And maybe we can get into like, how do you go about building your tech stack? I'd be interested in covering that. But at some point in time, you said, I need to build some other things.
Right.
And so what went into that mindset as you said, okay, I'm going to build some tools for a very specific reason?
So for that, I definitely feel like an accidental entrepreneur in that perspective, where with my background, I didn't come in with the prior financial planning experience working under another firm or anything like that. And so whether that's good or bad is a whole other conversation. But so my experience whenever I started to work with clients is just trying to figure out, like, just essentially creating a process and creating different deliverables to say, okay, what's the best way to communicate all of this stuff that we do in a way that can actually make sense to a client, because
Mhm.
you only get an hour with the client, and I work virtually, so I'm screen sharing, and that's a really valuable time. And so anytime that I would try to use financial planning software or anything else, or sometimes I use this whiteboard here, then it's like it can get a little bit clunky. And so it's like, okay, I just want to try to boil down what actually matters to them, so that we can create as much space in our meeting for good conversation. And honestly, it was really just born out of that, where I started doing that for my own clients. And then as I'm going along and I'm working with, I connect with other financial planners and get in study groups and things like that. I
Mhm.
started to just say like, hey, I have this client situation. Here's what I'm showing them so far, right? And so it kind of spread a little bit from that, where one of the first planners, Brian Face, so shout out to him if he watches this. He, like, from the get-go, he's like, you need to package this up and distribute this to people. People need this, right? But I was just like, no, it's Google Sheets and Google Slides and things like that, right? But trying to fast forward a little bit, so then sometime it was last fall, where so I mentioned being part of XYP, and Michael Kitsis had put something out in the XYPN forum to say, hey, does anybody create their own custom deliverables? And so the
Mhm.
different people that I've shared it with in the past, like my study group people and everything, they're just like, hey, Mike has something. And so it's like, okay, well, I'll just create a sample client and I'll put it out there and share it with everybody. And so that got picked up to where I got invited to present that to, it was a Kitsis, so it was the Financial Planning Value Summit last December.
Mhm.
And so I presented just the stuff that I've been doing. And there was a good number of advisors that were on that. So they saw that, reached out to me, say, hey, do you sell this? And it's like, well, not yet. It's like, but just kind of, but there was enough momentum there to where it's like, okay, let's package all this stuff and that definitely made me think differently about, it's one thing to just create something just for yourself, but whenever you're trying to create it for
Right.
distribution for other people,
You're
right?
willing to put up with
For other advisors.
different levels of user friendliness if it's just
Yeah.
you versus,
Right.
yeah, for public
Right.
consumption.
Yeah. It's like, there's some stuff where, I know the little workaround for this, but, whenever I'm trying to distribute it out, then I had to be a lot more thoughtful for the way that things were designed and things like that.
Yeah.
So I stood that up in late March, I think. And so kind of have the platform where it has the templates and a bunch of videos that walk through a lot of the process. And then the next thing that I'm going to be rolling out here pretty soon, hopefully this week actually, is to where try to create a more community aspect to it, so that everybody that has opted in, that there's a forum and a chat room and a message board and everything, where we can bounce ideas off each other and figure out what's the next iteration and evolution of
Mhm.
the whole plan packages. So I'm kind of excited for that part.
Yeah. Well, I mean, congrats on that. That's a great story. I love it. You mentioned going straight into being solo, having your own firm. And when
Mhm.
I joined the business, I joined an existing firm. And so they had, which was a benefit and a drawback, I think. They had all that infrastructure, right? Not only did we have all the ways that we would present the plan and build the plan, and that was all there.
Mhm.
We also had like this library, like a library. It was almost kind of like this word of mouth library of all the anecdotes. You know what I mean? So like when we were talking about like umbrella insurance, we'd be able to say, yeah, we had a client once, and this is why umbrella insurance was really valuable to them. And it's amazing how useful those are to be able to grab onto those.
Right.
So that was the benefit for me. Like I was able to ramp up, I think, very quickly without having to build infrastructure.
Right.
But I do think in hindsight, by not having to build it, I didn't have to be maybe as methodical and thinking about, okay, how would I build it from the ground up? And how would I build the product with the feedback from clients. And
Right.
so, and I think there's a lesson for all of us, which is, be it in software or any service, like you got to keep listening to your client. You can't
Right.
let these things ossify to the point where this is how we've always done it.
Right. Right.
Build, buy things, try them out. I think that's the only way that we can make sure that we continue to do the best we can do.
Yep.
One example I can think of is, and I think part of the reason you became famous is the I keep using that. I know it makes you blush, but I think it's just
it cracks me up. Like,
apologies.
both that, and then also the fact that I call it a beautiful financial plan, that
Yeah.
cracked me up for the longest time, because I was doing that Kitsis thing. People were like, who, like, did you hire a designer and to do all this stuff? And me coming from back end software development world,
Yeah.
I think that my eyes kind of, that I make kind of ugly stuff, but apparently it was and Michael Kitsis was the session was called like creating a beautiful
Okay.
bowl, and so I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna glom onto that.
Well, I can assure you the stuff that I build, the version 1 of Holistiplan and basically everything else in our product is definitely not beautiful. We have other people to help make my stuff more beautiful.